we hit the, I guess you could say, quarter pole maybe down the stretch of this regular season as the Mets have just completed a three-game sweep over the Washington Nationals. This is episode number 42 of the Queen's Connection, a production of Patton Sports Creative. I am your host, Andrew Patton, joined by the co-host, Corne Hogavine. Uh, I mean, not a lot to complain about in this series. This is a pretty good series all around for the New York Mets, both in Queens and some help outside of Queens as well. So the last 3 days have been pretty good if you're a fan of the New York Mets.
Yeah, definitely. Giving us a little two-game cushion before facing the Phillies is always helpful. The Braves, after winning two against the Dodgers in that series, we both thought a little bit from, oh God, they're gonna beat up on the Dodgers in that series, and then they lost two, if I'm correctly, and then they lost the series against the Reds. So definitely they aren't playing their best baseball, I would say. Uh, Obviously, the Braves are always iffy with the pitching they have, but overall, I think the offense and the bullpen for the Braves, they have had some tough losses. I think especially if I remember correct, Tuesday one where they had a 4-0 lead early and then they eventually still lost. I think that one hurt a little bit for them. Uh, so So yeah, right now the vibes for the Mets, the momentum is definitely on the Mets side. But yeah, there's still some games to play. There's still 11 tough games coming up. We now had the Nationals, which you hopefully win the series. Well, we eventually swept them. Good vibes, but there's a tough road coming up for us. And obviously, we are in a good spot. We are playing good baseball. I think even that Philadelphia series we played good baseball besides the offense. Now the offense and have some good days. So um, going in that series positive, but still we have to do it. We still have to do it.
Yeah, obviously the tough stretch here for the Mets if they want to get into the playoffs. Two of the three teams they are facing are pretty. I don't want to say they're guaranteed. Only one of them has guaranteed their spot, but it's pretty obvious the Phillies are going to make the playoffs too. So I feel comfortable saying two of the three teams they're going to face are guaranteed to be in the playoffs, and obviously they are fighting with the Atlanta Braves for that last wild card spot, or at least the final wild card spot in the National League. So a lot of tough teams the Mets will be facing down the stretch. So it's hard to say you need to sweep the Nationals, but it kind of felt like with what was coming up, they needed to beat up on the Nationals and take all three games, which they did. And that started on Monday night with a 2-1 win in extra innings. A very well pitched game. I mean, for the Mets' sake, all these games were very well pitched. But before the game on our last episode, we did give Jake Irvin his flowers. Talked about how maybe you look at him and I mean it's just one of these young Nationals pitchers coming up, and he's been pretty good all year, and obviously he pitched extremely well against the Mets back in on July 4th, and he had a pretty he looked pretty similar in this outing. Um, Obviously, the one run came around the score later in the eighth inning when the game was when the Nationals were up 1-0 after scratching a run out against Shamanaya. Jose Iglesias gets a big 2-out hit, so the Mets tie the game in the eighth, and they walked it off in the 10th thanks to Starling Marte, who started the game on the bench. Uh, he pinched hit for Eddie Alvarez before, and you're wearing your Starling Marte shirt as you show to me. But he gets the big hit in the 10th inning to win the game for the Mets. Um, and I think there was a little concern initially in this game because the offense had been performing great. They weren't great in Toronto. They had the big game against the Phillies to start that series, but then the last two games they kind of slowed down. So it kind of looked like with Jake Irvin the way he was going, it's like, oh my gosh, they're going to lose a 1-0 game to the Nationals, and but that was not the case. They scratch out two runs to get a big win, and I mean, you could talk about Marte coming off the bench after getting hit in the forearm in the Phillies series, and some questions about that, and or you could talk about how great Shamanaya was yet again, and the bullpen doing its job. There's a lot of positives to take away from Monday's opener.
Yeah, definitely. All those things you mentioned, The vibes for that game weren't necessarily as great as they are now. I know we had some conversation on the chat um, that we were a little bit concerned about the offense at that point. We scratched out a run in the eighth, like you said. Iglesias up the middle of the pitcher. I can't remember who the pitcher was that time to bring in Tyrone Taylor. Has been in the middle of almost everything this year. It's obviously not the best player we have, but he has been yeah, he's been very important. I think more important than his overall numbers show for us. So he was in there again with a big hit. Diaz, who kept that runner from scoring in the ninth, and then Reed Garrett, kudos to him, with the ghost runner not scoring and no earned run allowed in his last 11 appearance for Reed. So with all the starting pitching being great and at times the offense being slow, you need a good bullpen. And Reed Garrett has performed well, which obviously helps with how our September has been going. Shamanaya, great again. He's been great almost every time we see him on the mound. Used his fastball close to 80% of the time is one thing I noticed. That fastball with his lower arm slot um, has been tremendous. And we don't often see a starter be so successful with an 80% fastball rate. But something the Mets have done with Manaya is his uses of his sinker, uh, and with Tyler Megill, who's going to talk about, with Severino, with Peterson, and also with Quintana, is the usage of the two different fastballs. And that's really a revelation for the starting rotation this year. So huge win. It wasn't pretty. It was a little bit concerning still after that win, but luckily we have two other games we can talk about where those concerns uh, gotten a little bit less.
Yeah, the concerns were put to bed, I think is a good way
Yeah,
to put it. So
better way to put it.
so
Yeah.
obviously the Mets, a big 2-1 win. They were looking to carry that momentum over into game two, and they certainly did, and then some, because they took down the Washington Nationals by a score of 10-1. This was the I mean, I guess we could call it the Luisangel Acuna game, going 3 for 4. His first career home run. Also picked up his first career RBI, extra base hit. I mean, he also did pick up his first major league error in the game, but that's not. We're not going to look at that, even though that run did come around the score. And Washington was up 1-0 in this game, just like they were in the first game. But the Mets responded with four in the bottom of the third, and they just took off from there. Pete Alonso goes deep. He also picks up not the sexiest hit with runners in scoring position, but at this point, he just any hit and runners in scoring position is huge for Pete Alonso. Francisco Alvarez also with a home run. So just a really good all around night for the Mets offense that was struggling, I would say, for the most part in the last week or so. So to have a big outburst like that was huge, and obviously they carried it over to the next night. But we'll get there eventually. But Tyler Megill in this outing, obviously we've been, you could say, highly critical or hard on Tyler Megill on this podcast, but I think it was fair because really during the summer, it was just a lot of short outings because of high pitch counts, walks, deep counts to hitters and whatnot. And really, for the most part, since this recent recall for Tyler Megill, has not been the case. He pitched 6 innings on Tuesday, just one run, which obviously wasn't earned because of the error. Only two walks, 2 hits, 4 strikeouts, so not a high strikeout game for Megill. But that kind of goes to what you were talking about with me about, because I was at the game, so you're obviously not watching the TV broadcast. You said Steve Gelbs had an interesting report on Tyler Megill and becoming more of a pitcher and not a thrower. If you want to elaborate on that, you can, but also it goes to the point that we were talking about, at the game, the pitch sequencing they put up on the scoreboard, and there's definitely a lot more sinker usage with Tyler Megill this go around compared to his recent stints in the major league. So if you want to elaborate on that, or elaborate on the Steve Gelb's report, I hand the floor over to you.
Well, you said the most important things. I think it's clear that He made some adjustments, but one thing I did find interesting is that Tyler Megill never really thought uh, or by himself for what he wanted to throw. Gelbs reported that he just nodded, always was in agreement, so never really truly uh, paid attention to what the best next pitch would have been. So the Mets, so Hefner, I also said to you somewhere, we give our credits to Jeremy Hefner, but again, he had some maybe odd or out of the box type things that definitely worked. We saw the Shalmanaya warm up throws to the other side, to the other batter's box in the bullpen. And now this with Tyler Megill. They said when he was sent down to AAA, take ownership of your careers is what they said. And they meant by it is you have to uh, think ahead and be smarter when you pitch. I also noticed after that report that Tyler Megill at times also um, called his own pitches with the pitch com on his belt. So that was truly something I never noticed with Tyler Megill. So uh, I think that's definitely part of the Mets challenging him. And but he said that right now that Hefner and Megill in non-starts for Tyler. Megill is standing next to Hefner, and at times Hefner will ask Tyler Megill what is the next pitch that there should be thrown. And when Tyler Megill doesn't give the correct answer according to Hefner, Hefner is going to explain to Tyler Megill why. So Tyler Megill is learning on the fly what to do, and um, we see in this season with Tyler Megill, he had that splitter early on, which he didn't really throw in his last start. So he ditched that a little bit, and he used his sinker fastball way more, and he spotted it way better. It's not blind throwing to Francisco Alvarez. So I think that's I hope, and we have seen the results after that. High ground ball rate this time again for Tyler, which is also very good. So that fastball sinker combination works for multiple pitchers in this Mets rotation. It's clearly something that the Mets pitching staff has done quite well, which doesn't result necessarily in a lot of strikeouts, but a lot more ground ball rates, which also results that the Mets pitching staff doesn't have a great expected ERA if you look at baseball savant, but still their overall ERA is better. It's just something that David Stearns in Milwaukee has done in recent years, not getting these sexy names, but getting good years out of them. And he has done it again. So, and Tyler Megill has adjusted, and I hope he keeps it up because, man, a good Tyler Megill would solve a problem with what Christian Scott has maybe given us a little bit right now with the Tommy John surgery. Not his fault. I mean, it happens, but uh, could be a not only a problem solver for this year, but also a problem solved for next year.
Tyler Megill, his most recent recall he came up back on August 30th, and at that time he hadn't pitched in the major league since July 31st. Now it was a little bullpen stint against the Twins. His ERA was 5.17. His WHIP was 1.43. And now after this most recent start with the Nationals, his ERA is down to 4.08. His WHIP is down to 1.26. Also, the batting average against when he got recalled from AAA at that time, it was 246 against, and now it's down to 225. So he's limiting base runners, not allowing as many hits and walks as he was earlier in the year, and so maybe it goes to what you said about he's taking more ownership about his pitch arsenal, what he wants to throw in certain situations, and you give credit to him for making that adjustment, also, but also the organization for kind of planting that seed with him, and so credit to Hefner, Stearns, and all the parties involved in that. And obviously, Megill on the pitching side was the headliner, but on the offensive side, it has to be Luisangel Acuna. with his first major league home run, first major league double, first two major league RBIs. Um, however he got here, you know, we've had that discussion. We don't need to get into that, whatever. But regardless, he's here. He's playing a lot now because of Lindor's situation, and he's taking full advantage of it. And we talked about in our last episode, um, the stat line in AAA, it wasn't sexy by any means, but he had spurts down there where he was like really red hot for like a week or two, and then obviously he would cool back down. Certainly, the Mets have caught lightning in a bottle with him. He's played pretty well defensively, other than that one mistake he made. But you figured the night before in the extra inning game, late in the game, he comes in and the opportunities that are hit to him, he takes he takes advantage of them, makes the out, makes the right call. So I would say pretty much he's been good on the defensive side, and now offensively, he's getting big hits, and he's driving the ball well. So like I said, the Mets have certainly caught lightning in the bottle with Luisangel Acuna, and maybe this was kind of good for him because obviously with the year he had in AAA, he dropped in prospect rankings. I don't think he's on MLB's top 100 anymore. He dropped to number 12 in the Mets. So obviously, you do that math. There's no one else, he's definitely out of the MLB top 100, but he was there to start the season. He was in the top five, was probably even number one at one point. And since he got called or since he was a member of the Mets organization. So maybe kind of, I don't want to say the pressure was taken off him a little bit because obviously there's going to be pressure on him. He got traded for a future Hall of Famer. And it was a one for one deal. He wasn't like he was part of a package. They traded Max Scherzer straight up with money to get Luisangel Acuna. So maybe there is still some pressure on him from the fan base in that regard. But maybe him kind of having a bit of a down year in AAA also might have been good for him because now there's more eyes on Jet Williams or Brandon Sprode or whoever. Maybe Luisangel Acuna was flying a little bit under the radar, and now he's burst onto the scene at the major league level.
Yeah, definitely didn't. Well, maybe it depends on how you look at it, but it didn't help the expectations that fans had, including me. I've seen him play a couple of times, but I don't see AAA enough. I mean, I always watch the match first, and if there's no match, then I watch the minor leagues. So I had to go from stat lines, and those just weren't that great. Didn't walk enough. He struck out his fair share amount. Um, so his year in AAA just wasn't good, which led to obviously, I think there's a reason why MLB Pipeline dropped him that drastically after the Mets acquired him in just, I mean, 1.5 years. That's a major drop off. But we knew he had talent. We knew he had a quick bat. We knew he had speed, obviously, and we knew he can play defense. I would say we are now talking about, or not we necessarily, but I see people now talking about Luisangel Acuna as he is the next David Wright or something. We also have to talk that's just a couple of games. It's not like, it's a small sample size performance right now. Everything is great for him. He probably feels very good. There's a good head on him. I would say that. I heard some reports that he is calm and collective, even in midst of his struggles. So that's great to see, great to hear. But right now everything is false. He has hit 2 home runs, but let's be honest, both of those home runs were against Nationals pitchers that were on the bottom of their bullpen. So it's not against. I think the RBI double, for example, was way more impressive than necessarily the home runs. I think he faced a guy with a ERA over 15 yesterday for his second home run. And still, you have to hit him, and still, it's impressive. But I would temper a little bit of the expectations that fans have right now. I think it's obvious this is not going to stand. This is not going to be hold up. I think that's obvious. I see a lot of the comparisons with Ronald Acuna Jr. also in the way he hits and with the first hit. I think that's he's another player. Yes, his swing looks like him. Yes, it's his brother, but he's if he is gonna be Ronald Acuna Jr., that be clear, then that it was one of the best trades we have ever seen. Max Scherzer and what he's done for the Texas Rangers. But let's temper that a little bit. Enjoy the young guy playing well. One thing I would say is that he definitely has put himself into the conversation for next year with his performance right now. That's going to be interesting what they are going to do with Luisangel Acuna uh, after next spring. I think that's definitely part of the possibilities with how Stearns likes to give young players their shot in the majors. I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, well, it was funny too because that day, going to the game, I sent you the picture. They already had Luisangel Acuna jerseys in the pro shop. I was like, it seems like it's a little too soon, is it not? They don't even have Mark Vientos in there, JD Martinez or Luis Severino, Shamanaya. They don't have those guys in there, but they got Luisangel Acuna, who hasn't even been up for a week yet. But well, obviously, he goes on to have a tremendous night, and I like what you said there about enjoyed the moment with the young player. It's obviously fun. It's great to see. It makes it gives you hope for the future too with his development and whatnot. But you also do have to take into consideration what he hasn't even been here in the major leagues for a full week. Obviously, he's taking advantage of the opportunities, and I really like you said about the double because that also comes on the heels of his error in the top half of the inning and having that run come around to score. So a great response by him, and yeah, definitely a great night for Luisangel Acuna. You talk about the excitement of the young players. Well, the next night on Wednesday night in the series finale, it was more the older players that were providing a lot of the excitement, and particularly on the pitcher's mound with Jose Quintana making the start for the Mets, and his scoreless inning streak continues. He pitched another seven, allowing two hits, no runs, two walks, four strikeouts. His ERA is now down to 3.74 in a 10-0 Mets win. The Mets had a 9-run fourth inning, which was capped off by a home run from someone who really needed it. Brandon Nimmo had come close a couple of times of recent memory, and finally puts one out for his 20th on the year. So back-to-back 20-plus home run years for Brandon Nimmo. Also in this game, Mark Vientos picked up two hits and two RBIs. Marte had two RBIs. Luisangel Acuna had two more RBIs. Also, his second major league home run, like you talked about when we were talking about him. So another great all-around night for the Mets on both sides of the ball. But really, despite the Mets scoring 20 runs in their last two games, um, you know, uh, Jose Quintana is definitely the takeaway from this game. His last five outings, I believe they said his ERA is like 0.28, which is huge for the Mets. And I think, oh, what is it? 2.3, 0.23. Oh, okay. So I was off by 5 points or
Well,
whatever. Uh,
it's a big margin if it's just 23 points, and
right,
it's a
right,
big
right.
margin.
But we talked about is particularly earlier in the month when it looked like Paul Blackburn got hurt and his weird. I mean that whole thing is just like super weird. The spinal leak or spinal fluid leak, whatever. We don't need to get into that, but you figure the latter part of your rotation, those last two guys, you maybe didn't feel super comfortable about with just how Megill had pitched of late in his major league stints, and we know how up and down Jose Quintana has been all year, and he was in the midst of a down stretch. But these guys, when the Mets really needed it, really needed them, they turned it on. And Quintana has been great this month. I don't want to jinx anything with him because he's still got another couple big starts to make. The same thing with Tyler Megill, but to have these guys pitching the way they are to go along with Mania, Severino, David Peterson, that's huge. This is really huge for this team, and like I said, hopefully they can keep it up because they need these guys now more than ever to keep churning out performances like they have in the month of September.
Yeah, absolutely. I also made notes about some stats. 3.74 ERA, like you said, second best amongst qualifying pitchers for the Mets. Obviously, Peterson doesn't have the innings to be qualified because he would be first, but ahead of Severino, for example, just behind Freddie Peralta, and ahead of guys like Sonny Gray, Mitch Keller, Nathan Eovaldi. I think yes, he had his great and bad stretches this year. It's not like it's been a consistent year for Jose Quintana, but if you look at that ERA, I think you definitely take it from probably your fourth starter this year. So I want to give Quintana, I gave it after his last outing. I think he's been on a roll. I thought early on he had a little bit of an iffy start where he just missed some pitches, mostly inside to the righties. Um, but he adjusted quickly and was just in complete control. I think 4 base runners in 7 innings is just great. Another outing where he got a lot of ground balls again. Kudos also to the Mets defense. I think Iglesias made some very good plays. Those weren't hit hard, so Quintana earned those outs. But uh, I think on the broadcast they said Quintana needs to have good defense behind him. I think that's true. He doesn't strike out a lot of people, so it's logical that balls are put in play. And then you have strong defense behind you. And I also want to give some kudos to guys we might be a little bit hard on at some point, and that's Speed and Starling Marte, because Lindor is out, and both those guys had good days. Pete also just had a good series. He also had 5 RBIs on Tuesday and a good day yesterday. So we said that there were that hitters for the Mets uh, need to step up in the absence of Lindor, and obviously it helps that Luis Acuna is hitting like 500 with an OPS around 12 something, maybe even higher right now. But those guys had to step it up too, and Brandon Nimmo as well. So kudos to them for doing that in a very, very important series. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, obviously, no, it's the Nationals. It's not the most elite team you're going to face. But even just do like the way they perform, it maybe just gives them that confidence going into the this big series with the Phillies that they can, um, we can put up runs, we can feel good, and we they know they can put up runs and stuff like that. They did for the majority of the season, but it was just a bad stretch at a bad time of the year. They were scratching out some wins, but also had some tough losses because of some lack of offense. So, go. Hopefully, this carries over into this Phillies series. I mean, we talked about that with that big inning they had against the Blue Jays. It did on Friday, but unfortunately, it fizzled out. Hopefully, this time they can be a little bit more consistent. They are going to face some pretty good pitching, particularly towards the end of this series. The pitching gets progressively better for the Phillies as the series goes on. So,
yeah,
uh,
need to win game one. I would say we need to the first game.
yeah,
If we lose Thursday, it's going to be a very difficult series, and then you just hope that the Braves, who are facing the Reds one game, and then they are facing. Can't remember.
keep stalling because then I can figure it out.
Oh, I don't remember.
There we
So
go.
yeah.
They got the weekend in Miami. They have a weekend in Miami.
Well, then that yeah. I mean, they had trouble with the Reds, so it's not a given that the Braves gonna beat the Marlins. I think the Marlins also beat the Phillies a couple of times a week ago. So let's
The
hope
Marlins beat the
they
Dodgers the other night too,
yeah, yeah. Let's hope they help us in that playoff race instead of
screwing us over
killing.
like they usually screwing
Yeah,
them over like they usually do.
exactly.
Yeah,
So, but still, I think I think the Thursday, so the tonight game is very, very important for the Mets in this series. Facing Taiwan Walker, we have Luis Severino, and with how our pitching has been lately, I I have good hope that if we win the first one, that we can at least split that series and have a decent spot for our series against the Atlanta Braves. But yeah, the offense. I also think I would say that the D, DL Hurst is it, or is it DJ Hurst?
DJ
What
Hers.
was DJ Hurst? DL Hall is the
Right.
bluest pitcher.
Yep.
Yeah, all the D and the D
DH.
and then yeah, exactly. I would say he had a pretty good year. Great strikeout percentage. So it's not. It is the Nationals, but that's a talented young guy. I think Mitchell Parker obviously was the guy that the Mets have had the most success against, but that Hurts guy has some good stuff. So eventually we got to him. The first 3 innings we didn't, and we have seen that with the Mets that they are able to pound on when they finally get to a pitcher. So that was great to see. But yeah, after that inning, obviously the ninth run inning, you mostly don't see great players, and your pitcher can just throw to contact like Quintana did.
Yep. No question about that. And like you said, there was
What were
some.
you smirking about?
What?
What were you smirking about, Andrew?
What was I smirking about? I don't
Yeah,
know. I'm just in a great mood because you look at the wild card standings right now. The Mets are they're tied with the Diamondbacks, but they have the tiebreaker over the Diamondbacks. So the Mets are sitting in the second wild card spot right now, over the Arizona Diamondbacks. Like I said, they're tied. They're two up on the Atlanta Braves. They're 2.5 back of the San Diego Padres. So I'm smirking or I'm smiling because the Mets are sitting in a good spot right now. Now, come Sunday after that, maybe things are different. I'm a big old Polly Prissy pants and I'm being a pouty, whatever. But right now, I'm soaking it
almost
in the
hope that
vibes.
the
And
Mets will it up because you will be a grumpy guy then. But no, no, no. I hope the Mets win for
obviously,
that reason. I wanna see happy Andrew.
right. Like everyone wants to see happy Jeff, you want to see happy Andrew.
Yeah. Well, yeah. True.
So that's what. Well, uh, only one team to talk about in the minor league level right now,
Yes.
and that's the Syracuse Mets. But um, they do have another interesting prospect playing for them now because the Binghamton season is over. So Mr. Jet Williams is a part of the Syracuse Mets right now, and I'm sure you'll mention him in your what probably will be a minor league minute.
Yes. So Syracuse, only team left Tuesday. Another high-scoring game as Syracuse won 15-7. Homers from J.T. Schwartz, Jose Azocar, and Yomer Sanchez. Azocar a two-run homer, Schwartz a three-run homer, and Sanchez a grand slam. Those three hitters combined for 11 RBIs in the win. Mike Fessel did struggle, allowing 6 runs over four, but the bullpen did well to close out the win. Wednesday, Jose Azocar had been a tremendous pickup to add depth and a control player for Stearns for years to come. Azocar hit another home run, going 3 for 4 with 3 RBIs. Aforementioned Jet Williams went 2 for 4 with a double and 2 runs scored. Gilbert went 2 for 4 with 2 doubles and 2 RBIs. Carlos Cortez homered in a 2 for 5, 3 run scored day, but the Syracuse Mets still lost 9-8 after 10. And also good to mention that Brett Beatty did DH for the Syracuse Mets, at least as far as I know.
That was probably about a minute.
That was probably about a minute.
Probably about a
Very
minute.
quick.
So very quick one. Um, and I guess now, I guess we can move on to this Phillies preview because this is the last 4 games at City Field on the schedule for now. So I would very much follow Brandon Nimmo's call to action last night. After some maybe lackluster crowds the first 2 games, they did have 34,000 last night, which is much better. But Philadelphia, it's a pretty, you could take the train, you could just drive up the New Jersey Turnpike. There's going to be Philly fans there, no question about that. So don't make it like Citizens Bank Park. It's City Field. It's the home of the New York Mets, not the home of the Philadelphia Phillies. So, like Brandon Nimmo, I put a call to action out there for Mets fans to get out there, get in the ballpark, and root these guys on because it could be it could be the last time you see the team for this season at City Field, and B, they're in the midst of a chase for a playoff spot. I know the wild card isn't necessarily as sexy as the division, but this is the team that's fighting for a playoff spot. Who would have thought that at the end of May, early June? So get out there, get to the ballpark, root on the Mets. Uh, And yeah, so there's the call to action from us. But
Yeah, I totally agree. If we were close, we would probably get that together at some point this weekend. If we, but yeah, I'm just a little bit too far away to get to a game, so I would know what to do if I was close there. However, Philadelphia, tough team, going to be a difficult series, and I had some other thing in my mind which I totally forgot right now. So move on, Henry.
well,
Getting older.
maybe we'll come back to you when I'm going over the pitching matchups in these next four games for the Mets and Phillies. It starts tonight, a 7:15 start. A lot of national attention on this series. Tonight's game is on Fox. It is going to be, as you mentioned earlier, Taijuan Walker taking the mound for the Phillies, going up against Luis Severino. We know Taijuan Walker. That last Saturday game held the Mets down pretty good when the Phillies really needed it. So Mets were not able to get some runs off Taijuan Walker. So big if they can do that tonight with Luis Severino on the mound. Carrot go the Friday night. That's on Apple TV Plus. A battle of lefties, just like it was this past Sunday. It's Christopher Sanchez taking the mound for the Phillies. He'll be going up against David Peterson. We know how that game went. It was very well pitched on both sides. So maybe they always say you faced another team, the same team in back-to-back starts. Maybe you're not necessarily as sharp as you were the first go around. So maybe after, each start just allowed one earned run, maybe it's going to be a big offensive explosion. Uh, who knows? Hopefully not. And if
Oh,
it is, hopefully it's done more on the Mets side than the Philly side.
exactly.
Saturday is the last SNY broadcast at Citi Field, anyway. It is a 4:10 first pitch. It's Ranger Suarez, who has given the Mets lots of fits, uh, going up against Sean Manaea. So probably the two best lefties on these teams are going to do battle on Saturday. And then Sunday night baseball, ESPN, obviously. It's Zach Wheeler on the mound for the Phillies. Currently TBD for the Mets, but that would be the Tyler Megill spot. So I would imagine Tyler Megill is probably going to make that start for the Mets on Sunday night, even though it has not been confirmed yet, at least not on Mets.com anyway. So those are the next four games. Obviously, they are crucial games, massive games, whatever word you want to use to describe them that resembles important, because they are very important. And the Mets, coming off that sweep of the Nationals, have some momentum on their side. We know the Phillies just had a bit of a tough series against the uh, Milwaukee Brewers. I know the Brewers won last night. So obviously they're coming to facing a division winning team in the Milwaukee Brewers, and now they're going to come to New York to face a team in the Mets that I don't want to say they're desperate, but the every win is important, and margin of error is very little. Especially with how the Braves, we know Atlanta, we know they can just turn it on any moment. So two games behind the Mets right now. So big games for the Mets. Call for big performances. So we will go to our player of the series predictions. Uh, I had the pitcher last time, and it was Tyler McGill, and it went pretty good. So now we're going to flip flop things. I will, out of courtesy to you, I will not mention who you picked because I think that person of everyone in that series was the
The worst.
wasn't necessarily pulling their weight, and unfortunately,
No,
it hasn't been the case for a while. So it creates an interesting conversation.
unfortunately.
It creates an interesting conversation that we can hopefully have a discussion about if the Mets clinch a postseason spot. But anyway, let's just focus on the next four games. Or who who are you going with? Because we are a pitching podcast, and you get the pitcher this time. So uh, the floor is yours. Who is going to have a big pitching performance for the Mets?
I hope this guy has a couple of big pitching performances, which obviously shows where I'm going with this one. I'm going with a guy who probably has to be on in this series for the Mets if it's close to get a chance and neutralize some of the left-handed hitters in the Phillies lineup, and it's Danny Young. Danny Young has been, I would say, a little bit iffy, maybe a little bit unlucky his last outing. But overall, I still think that he is our main guy to get Harper as Schwarber out in big spots. So he's gonna have his work cut out for him, and hopefully he's gonna show us that he is part of this Mets bullpen in the postseason and next year too.
I like the pick. We're big Danny Young fans, and I like going a little bit outside the box with a bullpen arm and the way that the Phillies have with some lefty power. Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper, particularly Bryce Harper, who just really kills the Mets and everyone else on the Phillies. They showed that stat in the last series. It's Harper and everyone else currently. Uh, when it comes to the production against the Mets. Hopefully, I didn't jinx anything there, but yeah, getting big outs late in innings is going to be huge, and hopefully Danny Young can do that for the Mets. I'm going to go with a guy who's been pretty hot of late. He's done a tremendous job filling in for Francisco Lindor in the leadoff spot, and that's Mr. OMG himself, Jose Iglesias. I know hopefully Lindor can get back into action in this series, and maybe they could get Iglesias a day off and have Acuna play second one day or something like that, or Eddie Alvarez, whoever they want. But for the time being, Jose Iglesias is going to be in that leadoff spot, and he's done a tremendous job of being a tone setter there, picking up hits, finding ways to get on base, driving in that big run on Monday. So let's go with Mr. OMG Jose Iglesias to have a big series against the Philadelphia Phillies.
Well, let's hope it both comes through.
Yes, your pick is a little bit more, maybe more fun and creative compared to mine, but sometimes you want guys who are not necessarily performing where you'd like them. So you pick them and hopefully they break out. Sometimes you just got to go with you got to go with a hot hand. So I'm going to go with a guy who's got a what's his hit streak at now? It's got like 12 or 13, something like that. Something like that.
I don't know, honestly.
But either
Yeah,
way,
but
he's
he's been really, really good.
yep.
Uh, so yeah.
So I think hopefully both our picks turn out well because then it means the series turned out well for the Mets.
So
So that's
I,
hope.
I, I remembered what I want to ask.
Oh, go ahead.
One more ask. How many? What's the Phillies magic number?
Oh, I don't know, but there is they could clinch in New York, I think.
Yeah, I guess.
So
Yeah,
that's also going to probably entice a lot of Philly fans to come up if the
bingo. That's where I was heading at. But also, if they win one game and they clinch, for example, I don't know if that's a possibility, but
get the day
that
after
doesn't
lineup.
exactly. So then maybe you get a little bit easier win in the Sunday game. Maybe don't even let Wheeler start, for example, and let Wheeler start the next day. So it could eventually work out well. If if the Phillies can clinch against the Mets, do it so you have the day after lineup. That's all I can say.
That's the thing that sucks about not having the whole 40-man roster on your getting called up because like you think of those some of
Yeah,
those day after lineups for the Mets back in 2015, 2016
yeah.
when you got like Matt Reynolds on the third, you know.
Dilson Herrera, my boy, hitting a home run
Right.
in
Yeah.
in the
Oh
day
man.
after. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to look up those. I'm gonna have to look up that lineup now after we wrap up here, because now I don't care. But I definitely remember Matt Reynolds was like hitting third or hitting fifth, somewhere in there.
Was that 2016 or was it 20? That
2015,
was probably 26. Was Reynolds? Wasn't
20,
Reynolds?
2016,
He,
yeah,
yeah, he was making his debut in that postseason in 2015. He didn't
yeah,
play, but
yeah, yeah.
he was on the bench. Yeah.
So I will have to go look up those
Oh
lineups.
man, we have facts in our heads. It's amazing.
I know a lot of useful information.
Exactly. Well, it was useful because we could mention it in a podcast here.
That's very true. That is very true. So, all right, sir. Well, I think we're going to let you go. And kind of a weird scheduling thing for you. This potentially could have been your last regular season episode. So if that's the
Yeah,
case, I feel sorry for everyone else that wants to tune in for the rest of the way because they'll just be stuck with me. But we also
we
thank
try.
Miss.
We will try.
We'll figure it out. We'll see how things play out. Just like how we'll see
Yes.
how things play out on the baseball field these next couple of days. So anyway, sir,
Okay.
thank you for joining us and enjoy your holiday, vacation. We call it vacation, you call holiday. So enjoy your time to relax, I
No,
guess.
I call it vakantie because that's Dutch. I don't speak English here, Andrew. I talk English to you, but not so fake vakantie.
Vakantie. All right.
Yeah, pretty good.
Well, there's your Dutch word for the day on this episode of the Queen's Connection, which is a production of Pat and Sports Creative. Make sure to follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, just search the Queen's Connection. And make sure to like and subscribe wherever you listen on Spotify or YouTube. So we thank you for listening. Enjoy these next couple games against the Philadelphia Phillies as the Mets are on a chase, on a quest for a postseason berth.